Let me take you back to that crisp autumn afternoon in 2023. No, wait, let's make it even more vivid. It was one of those days where the air hangs heavy with the scent of fallen leaves, a mix of earthy decay and the promise of winter's chill just around the corner. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the suburban streets, turning everything golden like an old photograph you'd pull from a dusty album. I was behind the wheel of my trusty old Ford F-150, the one with the faded blue paint and the engine that rumbles like an old friend clearing his throat. That truck's been with me through thick and thin, hauling lumber for home projects, towing the boat for family fishing trips, even serving as a makeshift bed during that cross-country move back in the 90s when Sarah and I were young and broke, chasing dreams with nothing but grit and a full tank of gas. I wasn't planning on stopping anywhere special that day. Just a routine errand to the hardware store for some plumbing supplies. That damn faucet in the kitchen had been dripping for weeks, a persistent tap, tap, tap that echoed my own nagging thoughts about getting older, about how time slips away faster than you can fix it. But as I cruised past my son-in-law Jason's house, that cozy two-story colonial with the wraparound porch we'd all pitched in to stain last spring, something tugged at me. Maybe it was paternal instinct, the kind that never fully retires even after your daughter walks down the aisle. Emily had married Jason 5 years ago, and he'd become like a son to me, reliable, hardworking, the type of guy who'd show up unannounced to mow your lawn when you're laid up with a bad back. But that day, seeing my wife's silver Honda Accord parked right at the gate, gleaming under the afternoon light like it had been polished just for the occasion, set off alarm bells in my head. Sarah hadn't mentioned a thing about visiting Jason. We'd had breakfast together that morning, black coffee for me, herbal tea for her, the usual banter about the grandkids' latest antics. She said she was heading to the grocery store, maybe stopping by the library for a new mystery novel. 35 years of marriage, and I'd learned to read her like a well-worn map. But this was a detour I hadn't seen coming. My mind raced back to little moments that suddenly felt suspicious. Her phone buzzing more often lately. Quick glances away when I'd ask about her day. Jason's evasive answers at Sunday dinners when I'd probe about work or life. Was I being paranoid? Maybe. But trust me, fellas, when you've stared down layoffs at the mill, fought through Sarah's cancer scare in '98, those long nights in the hospital where the beeps of machines sounded like countdowns, you learn that gut feelings aren't just indigestion. I pulled over a block away, killing the engine with a sigh that fogged the windshield. Heart thumping like a bass drum in my chest, I stepped out, the cool breeze whipping through my flannel shirt, carrying the faint aroma of someone nearby firing up a grill. Sneaking up to my own family's house felt ridiculous, like I was the villain in one of those Lifetime movies Sarah loves. But curiosity or fear pushed me forward. I crept along the side yard, dodging the rose bushes Sarah had planted as a housewarming gift, their thorns snagging at my jeans like warnings I ignored. The window to the living room was cracked open just a sliver, curtains billowing softly, and I could hear muffled voices inside. Pressing close, the glass cold against my cheek, I strained to listen, my breath shallow, pulse roaring in my ears. There they were, Sarah, her silver hair tied back in that practical ponytail, sitting on the edge of the couch with Jason across from her. The room was bathed in the warm glow of that antique floor lamp, the one Emily inherited from her grandmother, casting flickering shadows on the walls lined with family photos. Us at the beach. Jason and Emily's wedding day, the grandkids' sticky-fingered grins. Papers were spread out on the coffee table between them, and their tones were hushed, conspiratorial. "Can't let him find out yet," Sarah was saying, her voice laced with a tension I'd only heard during tough times, like when we almost lost the house in the recession. "It has to be perfect. He's been through so much, the mill closing, the health stuff. He deserves this without any spoilers." Jason leaned forward, rubbing his temples, looking every bit the stressed young dad he was. "I know, Mom, but keeping this from him, it's eating at me." "What if he suspects?" "He's sharp, you know that. Remember how he figured out Emily's surprise pregnancy before we even told him?" "Suspects? Keeping what from me?" The words landed like gut punches, each one heavier than the last. My mind spiraled into dark places I'd never imagined visiting. Betrayal? An affair? Some family secret that would shatter the life we'd built brick by brick? I thought of my own father, how he'd discovered my mother's hidden letters from an old flame, leading to a divorce that left scars deeper than any mill accident. Was this my turn? The world outside blurred, the neighbor's dog barking in the distance, leaves rustling like whispers of accusation. I couldn't believe my ears. It was like the foundation of my world was cracking, fissures spreading from that single overheard conversation. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chill, and I gripped the windowsill so hard my knuckles whitened. Part of me wanted to storm in, demand answers, but another part, the wiser, weathered part forged from years of holding back tempers on the job site, urged patience. Little did I know that patience would unveil not destruction, but the deepest affirmation of love I'd ever known. As I crouched by the window of Jason's house, the cold glass pressing against my cheek like a warning, the fragments of conversation I overheard began to shift the ground beneath me. My heart was still hammering, my mind tangled in a web of suspicion spun from Sarah's whispered words. Can't let him find out yet. Jason's reply laced with worry. What if he suspects? Had me picturing the worst. Secrets, betrayal, a fracture in the family I'd poured my life into building. The autumn air carried the faint tang of wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney, grounding me just enough to keep listening instead of barging in like a bull through a gate. And thank God I did, because what came next wasn't the knife I feared. It was a lifeline. Sarah's voice softened, the way it always does when she's talking about something close to her heart, like when she'd read bedtime stories to Emily or comfort me after a brutal day at the mill. It's not just about the surprise, Jason, she said, her tone carrying a weight that made my ears prick up. It's about showing him we see everything he's done. The late shifts, the sacrifices, the way he held us together when I was sick. This party, this moment, it's our way of giving back. I found that guitar, the exact model he sold to pay for Emily's college tuition. It's not just a gift. It's a piece of him we're bringing back. Jason's chuckle was low, almost reverent. Yeah, Mom, you're right. I still remember him teaching me how to change a tire when I was 16. All patience even after I stripped the lug nut. Said, life's about fixing what you can and letting go of what you can't. This party's our fix, isn't it? For all he's carried. The words hit me like a warm wave, washing away the icy dread that had gripped my chest. A surprise party for me. Not a betrayal, but a conspiracy of love, stitched together by the two people I trusted most in this world, even if I doubted them for a fleeting, foolish moment. My knees buckled slightly, and I steadied myself against the windowsill, the rough wood scraping my palm as I processed the truth. They weren't hiding something to hurt me. They were hiding something to honor me. The guitar, God, that guitar. I'd sold my old Gibson acoustic in '02, a decision that stung like a fresh wound. It was the price of Emily's first semester at college, a choice I never regretted, but always mourned, like losing a piece of my younger self who'd strummed Dylan tunes under the stars with Sarah by my side. The thought of them tracking down a twin to that instrument, of planning a celebration to mark my 60th birthday, turned my suspicion into a humbling mirror. In that moment, I saw flashes of my life through their eyes, the double shifts I'd pulled at the mill to keep the lights on, the way I'd driven Emily to every soccer practice without complaint, even when my back screamed from hauling steel. I remembered the night Sarah's cancer diagnosis came, how we sat in the dark, hands clasped, promising to face it together. We did, through chemo, through tears, through the miracle of remission. Jason, too, had become part of that tapestry, stepping up as a son-in-law who'd call just to check in, who'd rebuild my shed after a storm without being asked. This wasn't just a party. It was a testament to the invisible threads of sacrifice and love that bind a family. Threads I'd sometimes taken for granted. My breath fogged the window as I backed away, heart pounding not with fear now, but with a gratitude so fierce it almost hurt. The world outside seemed sharper, the rustle of leaves like a quiet applause, the distant bark of a dog a reminder of life's simple pulse. I'd almost let my own fears rewrite their intentions, nearly turned love into betrayal because I didn't trust the full story. It was a wake-up call, raw and real, like the time I misjudged a buddy at the mill for slacking, only to learn he'd been covering my shifts to give me time with Sarah during her recovery. Assumptions, I realized, are the rust that eats away at trust if you let them. The Sarah and Jason's conversation sank in. Crouched there by the window with the autumn chill seeping through my flannel, I felt the weight of my own history pressing against me. The initial shock of suspicion, Those jagged shards of doubt that had sliced through my trust gave way to a deeper reckoning. Their words laced with love and gratitude weren't just about a surprise party. They were a mirror held up to my life, reflecting every sacrifice, every quiet victory, every moment I'd pushed through for the sake of family. Standing there, the faint scent of damp leaves and distant wood smoke grounding me, I let my mind wander back through the years, piecing together the man I'd become through the lens of their devotion. I thought of the early days with Sarah, back in the late 80s when we were just two kids in love, scraping by in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled of mildew and dreams. I'd worked 12-hour shifts at the steel mill, my hands blistered from handling molten metal, my body aching but my heart full because I knew every paycheck was a brick in the foundation of our future. Sarah would wait up, a pot of coffee brewing, her smile brighter than the neon diner sign down the road. One night, I came home bone-tired, only to find her hunched over a sewing machine, stitching patches onto my work jeans to save us a few bucks. "We're in this together, Mike," she'd said, her voice steady as steel. That memory, vivid as the day it happened, hit me now with a force that made my throat tighten. How had I doubted her even for a moment? Then there was Emily, our daughter, who'd grown from a giggling toddler into the fierce woman who'd married Jason. I remembered the summer she turned 16, hell-bent on making the varsity soccer team. I'd drive her to practice at dawn, the horizon blushing pink, her cleats thumping against the truck's floorboard. One morning, after a bad game where she'd missed a crucial goal, she broke down in the passenger seat, tears streaking her dusty cheeks. "I'm not good enough, Dad," she'd sobbed. I pulled over, looked her in the eyes, and said, "You don't have to be the best, Em. You just have to keep showing up." She made the team that year, and I was there for every game, cheering myself hoarse. Hearing Jason mention those sacrifices, my time, my presence, reminded me that those moments weren't just chores. They were the threads that wove our family tight, but it wasn't all rosy. There were shadows too, moments I wasn't proud of. Like the time in '95 when I let stress from a looming layoff at the mill spill over at home. I'd snapped at Sarah over something trivial, burnt toast maybe, and saw the hurt in her eyes, a flicker of the woman who'd carried us through her own fears. It took a week of apologies, of small gestures like bringing her coffee in bed, to mend that crack. Or the time I misjudged a coworker, Tom, accusing him of slacking on a project, only to learn he'd been pulling all-nighters to cover for me during Sarah's cancer scare in '98. Those hospital nights were a blur of antiseptic smells and sterile hallways, but Tom's quiet support, dropping off casseroles, checking my work, taught me how quick I was to assume the worst. Standing by Jason's window, those lessons stung anew. I'd almost let that same reflex poison the love staring me in the face. The imagery of my life played like a reel. The sweat-soaked summers at the mill. The crackle of our old radio playing Springsteen as Sarah and I danced in the kitchen. The weight of Emily's tiny hand in mine as we crossed the street. Each scene was a brushstroke in a portrait I hadn't fully appreciated until now. Sarah and Jason's plan wasn't just a party. It was a love letter to the man they saw. One who'd weathered storms, who'd chosen family over ease, who'd rebuilt what life broke. My eyes stung, not from the cold but from the realization that I'd almost missed this truth, blinded by a moment's doubt. It was humbling, like standing on a mountaintop and seeing the vastness of your own small life laid bare. As I backed away from Jason's window, the weight of Sarah and Jason's words, planning not betrayal but a tribute to my life, settled into my bones like a fire chasing away the autumn chill. The suspicion that had gripped me, cold and sharp as the glass against my cheek, dissolved into a humbling gratitude. I drove home that evening, the Ford's familiar rumble a steady counterpoint to the storm of emotions in my chest. But I knew I couldn't just sit on what I'd learned. The truth demanded more than silence. It demanded connection. I'd spent too many years letting moments pass, assuming there'd always be time to mend or celebrate. This wasn't just about a surprise party. It was about facing the people I loved with the raw honesty they deserved. The next Sunday, our weekly family dinner rolled around, the kind where the table groans under Sarah's pot roast, and the grandkids' chatter drowns out the clink of silverware. I'd been carrying the secret of what I'd overheard for days, letting it simmer, unsure how to bridge the gap between my doubts and their devotion. As we gathered in the dining room, The air thick with the savory aroma of gravy and the warm glow of candles Sarah insisted on lighting to make it special. I felt the moment coming, like a wave you see building on the horizon. Jason was there, helping Emily corral the kids, his easy laugh mingling with their squeals. Sarah bustled in with a steaming dish, her apron dusted with flour, her eyes catching mine with that unspoken spark I'd almost misread as secrecy. After dessert, Sarah's peach cobbler, warm and sweet with a scoop of vanilla ice cream melting into the crevices. I cleared my throat, the sound louder than I intended in the sudden lull. Everyone looked up, forks paused, the kids' giggles fading. My heart thudded, not unlike the moment I'd proposed to Sarah 35 years ago, kneeling on a pier with nothing but a $50 ring and a prayer. "I've got something to say," I started, my voice rough like I'd swallowed gravel. Sarah's brow furrowed, and Jason shifted in his seat, probably wondering if their cover was blown. I could have played it safe, kept their secret, but that felt like cheating the moment. I needed them to know I saw them, really saw them. "I know about the party," I said, and the room went still, like the world holding its breath. Sarah's eyes widened, a flush creeping up her cheeks, while Jason let out a nervous chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. As I stood there in Jason's backyard, the weight of the overheard conversation still humming in my veins, I knew the moment demanded more than quiet gratitude. The revelation that Sarah and Jason were planning a surprise party, not a betrayal, but a celebration of my life, had cracked open something inside me. It wasn't just about the guitar they'd found or the party they'd schemed. It was about the love they'd woven into every detail, a love I'd nearly missed by letting suspicion cloud my vision. Driving home that evening, the Ford's headlights slicing through the twilight, the road ahead felt like a metaphor for what I needed to do next. Move forward, not just with relief, but with purpose. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and distant bonfires, and as the stars began to prick the sky, I made a silent vow to live differently, to honor their love with action. Not just words. Over the next few days, I carried their secret like a treasure, watching Sarah and Jason with fresh eyes. At breakfast, Sarah hummed as she poured coffee, her hands steady despite the years, and I saw the woman who'd stitched our family together through every storm. Layoffs, hospital stays, the endless grind of raising a kid on a shoestring. Jason, too, showed up to help me fix that damn leaky faucet, his toolbox clanking as he joked about my vintage plumbing skills. Each moment felt vivid, saturated with meaning, the clink of mugs, the creak of the porch swing, the laughter that spilled out when our grandkids tackled Jason in the grass. I'd almost let doubt rob me of this, and that realization burned like a brand. It reminded me of a time at the mill when I'd misjudged a coworker's absence, only to learn he'd been at his kid's bedside in the hospital. Life, I was learning, keeps teaching you to look beyond the surface, to trust the heart beneath. When the party finally arrived, it was a revelation in itself. Our backyard transformed into a living memory, lanterns strung like fireflies across the old oak tree, their golden glow dancing on the faces of friends and family. The air was thick with the sizzle of burgers, the tang of barbecue sauce, and the sweet bite of Sarah's apple pie, its crust flaking like pages of our history. My old mill buddies rolled in, their voices rough with years but warm with stories of late-night shifts and shared dreams. The grandkids darted through the crowd, their laughter a melody that stitched the night together. Then came the moment that stopped my heart. Sarah and Jason stepped forward, holding a package wrapped in crinkled newspaper, the kind we used to save for kindling during lean winters. I peeled it open, hands shaking, and there it was, a Gibson acoustic, its wood polished to a warm sheen, a near-perfect twin to the one I'd sold to pay Emily's college tuition. Strumming it, the chords of Thunder Road vibrating under my fingers, I was 25 again, Sarah swaying beside me, the world full of possibility. That guitar wasn't just a gift. It was a bridge to the past and a promise for the future. As I played, the crowd quieted, their faces a constellation of love. Sarah's eyes glistening, Jason's proud nod, Emily's hand squeezing her kid's shoulders. I realized this wasn't just a party. It was a reckoning, a chance to see my life through their eyes. I'd spent years thinking I was the one holding us up, but they'd been holding me too, in ways I'd never fully grasped. The moment felt like standing on a cliff's edge, the wind carrying every sacrifice, every quiet act of love, back to me in a rush of clarity. But clarity alone isn't enough. That night, as we danced under the stars, the guitar resting against the porch rail, I knew I had to do more than feel grateful. I had to act. I'd spent too long letting life's busyness dull my appreciation, missing chances to tell Sarah how her strength anchored me, or to thank Jason for stepping into our family like he'd always belonged. I thought of the times I'd held back, assuming there'd be another day to say what mattered. No more. This was my call to action, not just for me, but for anyone who'd ever let love slip through the cracks of doubt or distraction.